Hi, you're listening to the Sermon Podcast of Impact Church in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm Pastor Brandon, the church planter and lead pastor. We are a new church in the DC area that is centered on the gospel and sent to our neighborhoods, Northern Virginia, and the nations. Please visit our website at www.impactfxbg.church. There, you'll find our current meeting times and locations. Our prayer is that you are encouraged by the message you hear today and fall more in love with Jesus and others. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Franklin, and I'm a member here. And right now, we're going to be going into our GO time, which stands for Global Outreach Time. And this is what we'd like to let you know what Impact is doing in your neighborhoods, Northern Virginia, and the nations. And today's a really special one because we're going to be talking about church planting. As you see, we're a fairly new church plant. And so I wanted to bring up Brandon up a little bit to kind of set us up for the video that we're going to watch. Yeah.
It's power. I don't know. There we go. Hey, okay. So guys, we like to take time in the middle of every worship service as we're worshiping the Lord to highlight what God is doing through Impact Church around the world. And it's not to make anything of Impact Church. It is specifically designed because in the book of Acts chapter 13, it says that while the church was worshiping, that the Holy Spirit said to them to go start new churches. And so that's why we do that. That's why we celebrate that. And I know that a lot of people may not always understand, like, why would we start new churches? Or if you're like me, you thought starting churches was just something we did in other countries. Because if you look around, there's a lot of steeples in our country, a lot of church buildings. But not every church building means that there's a healthy church inside of that building. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, I was having breakfast in one of the most historic churches in the city of Fredericksburg. And because it's a restaurant now, it's not a church. Like people may ask, why do we need to start churches? And so that's why. The fact is that we are, just in the D.C. area, in Washington, D.C. area, we would need over 600 churches today just to keep up with the population growth and the amount of churches that are dying. Just in the D.C. area, 600 churches just to keep up with that. And so a lot of times we may look around and we may equate a church building with a gospel movement. But a gospel movement happens regardless of a church building because there are things like the field house that we can gather in. And so I want to encourage you, we want to be a church where everyone feels a part of starting new churches. And starting new churches is actually not as hard as you think it is. You start a new church by making disciples of Jesus. That's it. You don't have to have a big building. You don't have to preach. You don't have to have a big worship service. You just have to start teaching people how to follow Jesus. And as we teach others to follow Jesus, you will start a church. And that's how this church started. This church started just as one community group that has now multiplied into 7 community groups all throughout Stafford, Fredericksburg, and Spotsylvania. And as a result, now we have Sunday morning where those community groups can come together and hear what God is doing in and through. So that's a little bit about who we are as a church. That's why church planting matters, and that's kind of how we plant churches. I don't know if you have any other questions for me today.
Yeah, no, and you said it was easy. And, obviously, we started off as a community group, and then we multiplied into 2 community groups. Then we met, because we got too big, we met at somebody's fellowship hall. So, the process isn't that hard, and it is pretty easy. And then we launched, 6 months later?
Yeah, so, really, I want to encourage you, you don't have to be a person who becomes like a pastor to start a church. because even though I am a pastor and I helped start this church was made up of dozens of other people who were not pastors, who still carried the weight and burden of doing things like setting up these chairs or leading us in worship or running our tech or teaching our children how to follow Jesus. And so there will come a day where we are going to send some people out to start a new church from within. And it's not going to be a church split, because we're going to be really happy about it. We're going to be excited that the gospel is moving to start more churches and make more disciples. And so there may come a day where you are asked to join a team. We have people all in our church that picked up and moved, Franklin being one of them, who picked up and moved to come be a part of starting a new church in Fredericksburg. And he only had to move 50 minutes away, but it was still like a part of what God called him to do. So it's really awesome. Or you may not go, you may help fund a church plant. You may be able to give $50 a month to help start a new church, or you may be a prayer warrior that's going to pray against spiritual opposition to help start a new church. So everybody has a role to play in starting new churches.
Yeah, and that's one of the paths when we talk about our discipleship process. That's one of the paths that God may place in your heart. There's multiple paths that you may take.
Hi, Pastor Brandon here. Thanks again for listening to our Impact Church Sermon Podcast. If God has spoken to you today, or you have a prayer request you'd like to share, please email us at hello@impactfxbg.church. If you're local to the Fredericksburg area, we would love to see you for worship in person. But if not, please let us know if we can help you find a gospel-centered church right where you're at. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook or Instagram and on our website, www.impactfxbg.church. Until next time, keep living the dream.